Okay, so I've cut my top and bottom plate. I took a 6 meter length. I cut that in half. I nailed it together. There's one nail there. If you come down this end, there's another nail there. Notice how I've put the nails away from the edges so they don't get in the way of me marking my studs out on this wall. The reason you nail them together is that when you cut them, you know the top and the bottom plate are exactly the same length. And one's not longer than the other. If you have a look here, I've got a block on the end of this, on the end of the plates, and it says side wall. Now the reason I've put that block there is that this back wall sits between two walls. So if you can imagine a wall sitting here and a wall sitting there, right? So the reason I've used this block is that when we build our sidewall, we'll be using the same timber. So I've used the same gauge or the same piece of timber that I'm going to be building my sidewalls out of. And what I've done is I've set my first stud and I've measured from the outside edge of this block of timber. Now, if I had measured it from the outside of this plate, my studs would not be in the right place when we come to nail our lining on, which is ply. So if you're going to be putting a wall between two walls, always use the block and measure from the outside of the block. So what I did is I measured 622 from this point to this pencil mark. 622, and the reason I've done that is that these studs have to be 600 millimeter centers, okay, to pick up the center so we can nail the center of our ply sheet, which is our outside cladding. 22 is just half of the thickness of the stud. I mark that, put an X on the left hand side where the stud is going to end up being nailed, and I put a nail in there. And what I did was I put the edge of my tape there and I measured back 600, put a mark free, then 1200 and put a mark free. Now I didn't measure 600 and then put my tape on that and measure another 600. I measured both my studs from that same point. The reason you do that is that you know that your studs are in the right place. It's more accurate to take a running measure and mark as you run across the face of that bottom or top plate. So if this was 12, if this was along a wall, my next one would be 1800, then 2.4, then 3, then 3.6, and so on and so on and so on. So when you're marking out your studs, always mark out your centers or your placement from one single point. It's more accurate. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to separate these plates, and as you can see down the bottom here, I put a mark. I've marked the bottom plate, so I'm going to separate these two, and I'm going to transfer that mark across the top face of that bottom plate. I'll do that now.